There we go. All right, good morning, everybody. So we got to I believe, the Mishnah and Daf Tzadi Vav Amar Aleph. Today is Tzadi Vav, Tzadi Zayin. So the Mishnah says, Amrulo Meisa Ishtecha. So still dealing with cases with one's spouse goes off to Medina Sayyam. So his wife went off, and they told him his wife died. V'nasa achaisa mi'aviha, and then he marries her paternal sister. Right now, they only share the same father and Mesa, and then she goes off. And then is told that once again that she died. V'nasa achaisa mi'ima. Then he marries her maternal sister. It goes the opposite. Mesa, then he's told that she died. V'nasa achaisa. Then he married her sister mi'aviha from her father. Then he was told once again, Mesa, that she died. V'nasa achaisa mi'ima. Then he marries the maternal. So basically, it was a series of 5. Those of you on the art scroll, I think there's there's a small picture on the first page, 96A1. There's a picture with, so basically each sister that he marries is either a maternal or paternal, but no one of them, share complete parents. The Nimsu Kulan Kayamas. All of a sudden, to his surprise, all of a sudden the next boat comes off and all 5 women return. Yeah. And all of them return. Nimsu Kulan Kayamas. Mutter Berishayna Uveshlishis Achamishis. The halach is that really he's mutter to the first one, not to the second one. To the second one because she was half sisters with the first one, but then the third one did not share any mother or father with the first one, who is his initial wife, and therefore that kedushin was chal. And then once again, the 5th one also, the 4th one is since he'd be married to 3, so he couldn't marry 4 because that's her half sister, but he could be married to 5 because 5 was not related to 3 or 1, and therefore he's married to 1, 3, and 5. Upodros, so saying. And so the Yibum Archito then would pater the tzaras, the Yasser b'shnei aris. However, he's not married. He's also with 2 and 4. Vein bias achas man pater tzaras. And therefore, if he would have relations or Yibum Archito would not pater any of the others because once again, as we said, he's not married to 2 or 4. So you'd only be married to 2, 1, 3, or 5. And if, let's say, in that scenario we had earlier, that he married number 2 after the first one he was told died, and she did die. So in other words, his kedusha is now chal with 2, and then remember, 2 is connected with 3, so he can't be married to 3, but 2 is not connected to 4. So he could be married to 4, and then once again, so the 4th died and he married 5, but 5 can't do it because she was really half sisters with 5. So he's only married to 2 and 4. Right? Therefore, in that case, he would be mutter to stay with 2 and 4, and they, in case of Yibum and Pater, the Tzaras, V'aser, B'shlishis, V'chamishis. And the 3rd and 5th one would not be his wives. And relations or Yibum Chalitz with any one of them wouldn't pater the other tzaras because in that case 3 and 5 are not his wife. Only the number only 2 and 4 were. Fine. So that was the first sort of cases of the Mishnah. Then it goes Ben Teisha Shanim Mechad. Now a boy who is 9 years and a day, and halachically the bia of a 9-year-old and 1 day is considered to be bia, even though he's not necessarily a bardas, he's not a gadol, but his bia is considered to be a bia. So ben if he goes ahead and one of the brothers, let's say the husband dies, in a regular case, not the previous case, a husband dies, leaves over multiple brothers, and his 9-year-old brother does yibum, right? Well, we'll soon see what case. But if he goes ahead and does it, then even though he can't fully acquire her through bia because he's still a katan, nevertheless, his bia works to the extent that one of the other brothers can no longer take her for yibum, right? And therefore, through his bia would passel them. Ella hu paisel. tchila ve'achin paisa tchila. And if once and also if one of the brothers would do yibum or chalitza, then they would sort of initiate the yibum with them, and therefore that the 9-year-old would not be able to go ahead and do yibum or chalitza. However, the difference is who paisa betchila. He would passel only in the beginning, only if he was the first one. He was the first one up to bat, and he did, he came to do yibum. However, one of the other brothers who are gedolim, who are older than the age of 13, they would passel whether they do it initially, or maybe even, let's say, one of the brothers, let's say, do mimer or something like that, right? And then another brother comes along and then does mimer afterwards, or something, even after somebody else already initiated the yibum or chalitza process, they would pass. So ketzad hasa ben teishon v'yamechad shabal yivimto paisa de'achet. So therefore, if you would go ahead and it was bal yivimto, then you would pass for any of the other brothers to come to the yibum or chalitza bala achin basba mimer. If one of the brothers then, let's say, do mimer or nasnuget or chaltzu paistan al yado, then let's say he does bia first, which is not a full bia. It's because he can't acquire her midaraisa. So therefore, there is some of that zika is now there's still remaining. It's not complete. So if one of the other brothers who are gedolim either do mimer with her after she had bia with the 9-year-old, or they gave her a get, or they do chalitza, now his ability to go ahead and fulfill yibum after he becomes a gadol would no longer be possible. Fine, that was the mission. Zak the Gemara. So the Gemara question says, Mesa. So he had the case of after the first one dies and he's married to 2 and 4. So the Gemara says, so Atukulu lav le'achar misa rishon, and he knew when all of them after the misa rishon. Some of sheishis le'achar misas rishon avada. In other words, after that, initially she did die. In other words, the reports were true that she died. That was the difference between case number 2 and case number 1. Case number 1, to be said, all 5 of them who were alive, they all came back. As opposed to case number 2, when we said he was married to 2 and 4, was because the first one did die, and then I guess only 2, 3, 4, and 5 returned, from Medina Siyam. And then we said ben teishanim v'chulei. So ben teishanim yamechad tchila pasel b'soif lepasel. So he said that the ben teishanim yamechad, if he goes ahead and nobody else does any sort of mimer or yibum or chalitza or give a get. So he said ben teishanim yamechad tchila, only in the beginning pasel b'soif lepasel. In the end, he would have passed. I v'atani Rav Zvid Rav Yoshia ha'oisa mimer b'yavimta v'achar kach ba'achiv. Right, Shehu ben Teishaniv Yamechad Allah Pasla. But we have a case which actually argues with this. We have a case that if one of the older brothers goes ahead and does Maimer B'Yavimto, and afterwards the 9-year-old does Yibum, or which he can't, right? He has Bia with her. Then we say over there that he passes her. She can't even go ahead and be fully married to the one who gave her Maimer. So they said, Bia apostle afilu b'so. No, retract that which we said initially. In other words, his bia, in other words, of the 9-year-old can go ahead and ruin it, whether he's the first one to do it, or even after he does it after a mimer of one of his brothers who are gedolim. However, mimer tchila pasel b'soif le pasel. Right. But however, mimer in the beginning would passel. In other words, let's say the 9-year-old goes ahead and gives her kesef kedusha. So that is enough to begin the process of yibum. That once again, that she only builds, one house, and she can't go ahead and do with 2 brothers, right? She doesn't build 2 houses, only 1 house, right? And therefore, so even if he does mimer, the Rabbanan will say the mimer of a 9-year-old is enough, has enough of a kinyan to ruin the ability of any of the other brothers to go ahead and do yibum afterwards. However, bia afilu b'sof pasel. But we say that maimer tchila pasel b'sof pasel, right? Bia afilu b'sof pasel, right? But bia, if it comes afterwards, in other words, if one of the other brothers goes ahead and does maimer, and then he comes along and does bia, so that bia is going to be similar, right? So let's say another brother does mimer. So basically, we're elevating the fact that he does this 9-year-old, right, or 10 or 11, right, or 12. So his bia is similar to that of a gadol who does mimer, and therefore be a case like mimer achar mimer, right, which many hold is chal, and therefore none of the other brothers, let's say, who initiated, the first brother who did mimer, that he would not be able to go ahead and take her to Yibum because she already had Bia with the Ben Tesh Shana.
The age of 9, that's specific for Bia.
Right, correct.
So why mimer?
Right, so
mimer for that katan is also mimer.
Right, so that would be clearly the Rabbanan, even though normally, as we'll soon see in the Mishnah later on, katan goes ahead and or a 9-year-old tries to marry a woman and then he dies. There is no Yimachlitza because that could never chal. You're right. So, but they elevate his mimer to also be some sort of dirabanan that initiated the yibum process.
An 8-year-old mimer means nothing. That's
Right.
Nothing by Bia.
Exactly. Right.
What do you mean by
one day?
afilu b'sof?
After besof means after another. No, right. If another brother does mimer first, right? That's called b'tchila in the beginning, and then he comes along and then he wants to go ahead and if he does mimer, so that is nothing. That's considered to be nothing if his brother did mimer.
She's disqualified.
No. If a katan,
Yeah, the 9.
only the bia would be disqualifying if it was after one of the brothers' mimer. But a katan's mimer after is not strong enough to go ahead and ruin that initial mimer by the older brother. So the Gemara says, "I v'hak tani elashu paisel tchila v'hein tchila v'sof." So he says, "I that he puzzles only in the beginning." And they pass even to the basuf. And we say, Kate, so what's the case? Right? So our Mishnah seems to say that it's talking about Bia, it's not talking about Mimer, right? So the Gemara says, no, and really it's missing a part of this out with Shari. Ben who paisa tchila, hein paisa tchila, the saif. When it comes to a 9-year-old, right, and he passes in the beginning, they pass will be in the end. But the mimer, that's only talking about mimer that a katan, or when we say katan, we mean a 9-year-old, is bedafka mimer of albias. However, when it comes to bia itself, paiselas afilu besom, that would pass even after one of his brothers did mimer. Ketzad, how so? Ben Teshuvim Echad Shabali Vimto. If he was Ben Teshuvim Echad, he's 9-year-old in a day, and he's Bali Vimto, and then none of his brothers would be able to go ahead and do even after that. Umi Isle Mimer Klal Aide Achen, right? And would there be able to be mimer at all with the brothers? Vatanya Ben Teshuvim Echad Hu Paisel B'Davar Echad Ba'Achim Paisin Al Yado Ber B'Dvarim, right? A 9-year-old only passes one way. In other words, basically begins the process one way, and the brothers pass through 4 different ways. Who poisa de achin the bia? He only seems to only pass according to this brisa one way. It's dafka bia, and not if he gave her a get, not if he did mimer. The achin paisin aide bia, the mimer, beget, the chalitza. Those 4 ways. So I say bia the pasla bein dechila bein b'sayif psikale. No, the reason why they said it there is that Bia, since it passes by a katan, whether he was first or whether it came after one of his brothers, then psikale, then so therefore it's stated the halacha there because that's all that works true. However, mimer, right? However, when it comes to a ben tesh shrevi mechad, mimer the tchila possible, but possible. But when it comes to the mimer, only in the beginning, not the end, it doesn't pass. So therefore, this brisa did not want to list that because that depends on at what point it comes. So therefore, it didn't mention mimer of the bentation of Yom Echad, but really the mimer of the bentation of Yom Echad does work only if it was done initially before any of the brothers did anything. And Itamar Nami, someone we learn, Amar Rav Yehuda bar Shmuel, yesh lo get. He has a get. Right, Ben Teshuvim Echad v'chein Amar Tachlifa bar Avime yesh lo mimer. He has mimer, and Tanaim after someone learned yesh lo get v'yesh lo mimer. Divrei Rabbi Meir, and also, and even Rabbi Meir says another brisa that a katan does have a get and he does have mimer. The Savar Rabbi Meir yesh lo get, and he has a get. But Tanaim in a brisa asu bias Ben Teshuvim b'mimer begadol. They make the bia of a 9-year-old, right, like the mimer of a gadol, right, which is what we've been saying now. And the Remeir Omer, Asu Chalitzas Bentesha Kiget the Gadol. The Chalitza of a Bentesha is just like the get of a Gadol, of somebody who's an adult. Now, Vim Isa, and if you're telling me that Rabbi Meir holds that a get, a ben Teshin Yom Echad can give a get just like an older brother, so why did it say his chalitza is like the get of a gadol? He should write Vim Isa lisni kegito, like his own get. In other words, if you're holding that his get has the same status as a brother who gives a get, and therefore when a brother gives a get, he ruins the ability to any of the other brothers to go ahead and do yibum. So why did it say that his chalitza, that the 9-year-old's chalitza is like a gadol's get? It should say a 9-year-old's chalitza is like a 9-year-old's get, which also ruins it for the apostles of the other brothers. So Ravuna Berei de Yeshua Islay, he does have it. The zutar, right? However, it's a little less. Right. In other words, it's a little less. We'll soon see. What does that mean? It's smaller, right? So it says, Rabbi Gamliel Damar Ein Get Acher Get. When Rabbi Gamliel says Ein Get Acher Get, Hani Mili Begadol Acher Gadol. That's only talking about when one gadol, one brother, there's multiple brothers, and one brother gives a get, and then another one gives a get. Ein Get Acher Get. Right? When is that? Hani Mili Begadol Acher Gadol. The katan acher katan, or a katan, and one 9-year-old gives a get, and another 11-year-old gives a get. But gadol acher katan mahani. But a gadol who gives a get after, he gives after the get of his other brother. Therefore, he would root it, right? About gadol acher katan mahani. And the Rabbanan Dharma Yesh Get Acher Get, and according to the Rabbanan, well, there is Get Acher Get. Hani Mili Begadol Acher Gadol. In other words, that it was effective as a gadol or katan acher katan. About katan acher gadol, but however, a katan after a gadol loy mahani, that's ineffective. So yes, there is a get when it comes to a beit teshunim echad. However, his get is reduced in power, right? That if it comes after the get of one of his older brothers, that even though their get is only partial, right, because it's not yibum or chalitza, nevertheless, that is completely ineffective if the katan comes after the gadol. So that's the nafkamina when it comes to a katan, that the get of a katan after gadol is ineffective, that it wouldn't affect any of the other brothers. Fine.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Quick second. If Taylor got off is if the husband dies and he only has one brother who's a katan, 2 years old, does she have to wait till he gets?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
A gadol.
even though we say that it is effective when he's 9, let's say.
Right. So it's effective, but not to acquire her. All of a sudden, she's half right.
She's okay.
Right.
So she can't, exactly. So I'm saying, so she luckily has to wait till he's a gadol.
Till he's 13, right? Because and even if he does, right, some sort of bia at the age of 9, she still has to wait for him to finish the kinyan, or to divorce her at the age of 13, right?
She's in a good for 11 years.
Right, and she's stuck there.
So his bia at age 9,
Yeah. Is it?
apostles are, but his mimer is nothing.
No. His mimer is good,
His mimer is also.
but his mimer is ineffective
Until
It's at the end.
if another brother does it first. In other words, normally if one brother does mimer, there's a kedushin or rabbanan, and then another brother does mimer. Well, let's say we'll hold mimer acha mimer. So now, since the second brother Levi gave it to her, kesef kedushin, so therefore, since Shimon, when he gave mimer in the beginning, didn't fully acquire her, so her accepting the mimer from Levi also works. It works to the point now that Reuven says, that Shimon says, "Okay, I'm ready to marry you." Well, he can't marry her anymore because another brother gave her mimer also. So now you got to do chalitza. Like there's no, it passes us. Right. But if Shimon does mimer with her, then comes along the 9-year-old and gives her mimer, that we say, that's the difference. That we say that mimer is nothing. Shimon is still able to go ahead and take her in yibum. That's the difference. Right. Yeah.
But bia works different.
But bia after that would ruin it. Right. Fine. Very good. Mishnah. So Mishnah Tavat Tzadi Vav Amud Beis. Ben Mishnah. Ben Teish Shanim V'Yemechad. So a 9-year-old Shaba Al Yavimto. So he's Ba Yavimto Ve'Achar Kach Ba Aleha Achiv. Right. So you say that. Right. So you say Ben Teish Shanim Shaba Al Yavimto Ve'Achar Kach Ba Aleha Achiv. One brothers. Shahu Ben Teish Shanim V'Yemechad. Paisa Yado. So he say that if he was 9-year-old, he had right the bia with her,
These are twins.
and afterwards, right, right, another one. Okay, yeah,
Want to be less than a mitzvah. Won't be 9.
right,
11.
9, 10, right. I mean, someone who is not a gadol yet. Poisel yado, right? So now, since the second brother also ruined it for the first brother, so he passes it. However, Rabbi Shimon Omer lo posel. Right.
They're both.
Rabbi Shimon says lo posel, right? That and therefore, in other words, he holds that it doesn't posel, right? Because he says that, as we'll see in the Gemara, right, that that since over there that the one whatever amount that the first kinyan worked, that kinyan works. So therefore, there's no ability for his brother to also con her that way because she was already acquired through that way. In other words, whatever zika there was that could be taken, right, or be kinda, right. So the first brother already did. The second brother's is ineffective, right. So it's like a person marries a woman, someone else tries to marry the woman, he can't marry her. She's already mikudeshes to the first person. So it's over here, says Rabbi Shimon. And similarly, so so let's say a different case. There was one brother. He instead of having two brothers, there was a man who was married to two women, and then he died. So then he did bia with one, and then he did bia with the other one. So you say, so he can no longer take the first one. Are you ready? Because you can only take one wife. You don't take two. Right, so therefore, he can't go back to the first one and take her. He already ruined it by being ba al tsaras.
Even though he's only a pentess.
Correct. So you're right. And Rabbi Shimon Aimer loy pasul. Rabbi Shimon says it doesn't pass. And why is that? Zak to Gemara. So Tanya, brother Rabbi Shimon, lechachamim im bia rishayna bia shneina bia. If you hold that the bia rishayna, right, acquires her, so therefore, since he acquired her, so that therefore there is no room for him to acquire another wife. Right, therefore, bia shniya ain't a bia. V, in other words, when it comes to the case of two brothers, V bia rishayna ain't a bia, and if we say the bia is not can't really acquire, so the bia shniya also not mean a bia. Therefore, the second one is also not a bia. And masnis and like Ben Azai, our Mishnah is not like Ben Azai. The time Ben Azai Omer yesh maimer achar maimer. Right. In other words, in maimer is we said similar to bia of Ben Tes. Yesh maimer achar maimer b'shnei yavamim. With two brothers, but there is no mimer after mimer with two women, right? Two widows with one brother. It only works one way. There's two brothers, then each of them work, but not if there's one brother with two women. And therefore, our Mishnah seems to say it works both ways, whether there's two brothers and one woman, or there's one brother and two women. It works both ways. That the Sinachleikes and Ben Azai says no, it doesn't work in the latter case. Fine. Next Mishnah. I think it's the last Mishnah of the parak. So Ben Teisha Shanim v'Yaimechad Shaba Al Yavimto. Once again, you have a 9-year-old who is Bal Yavimto Umeis, and he dies. Chaletzes v'lo misevemus. Right. So he's Bal Yavimto. Right. And then he dies. Chalat says, then the other brothers have to do chalitza, can't do even, right? Similar to what we've been learning till now, in other words, that he partially has now acquired her, and therefore there's still some zika remaining from the first original husband, and therefore you can't take a woman that basically has two zikas, from the original husband and the brother who died when he was 9. Nasa isha, if regular you have a 9-year-old nasa isha meis hare. Zu ptura, right? There is it's pater. In other words, there is no marriage of a 9-year-old. Ben teishanim yemechad sheba ayavimto. Now, if you have a 9-year-old yemechad sheba ayavimto, he did bia right with his yivama. Umishihigdel, and when he gets married, nasa isha acheres, he marries somebody else. Umeis, and then he dies. So let's say that was Shimon. Shimon was younger. He was 9 years old. So he went ahead and he took Reuven's wife. He had bia with her when he was 9. And then Shimon got older. And then he married another woman. Okay. And then Shimon dies now. Umeis. Im lo yod es rishon deal. Now, if he never went ahead and had Bia again with the original Yavama, right? With the original Yavama, so therefore there's still some Zika left over from Ruvain, right? Choletz is v'lo miyisya v'emes. That woman, let's say that was Leah, right? Leah was married first, and then she fell to a 9-year-old. He did Bia, and then he never had Bia again with her when he was a gadol, and then he died. So now she has two Zikas, right? She was definitely married to Ruvain, and she was partially married to Shimon, and now she's falling to Levi, who's, let's say 25, right? Whatever, it doesn't matter, his age, he's older, right? So therefore, he has to chalitza v'lo misev emes. Bashnia, and the second one, in other words, Shimon's regular wife, chalitza o misev emes. You can do chalitza or yibum. And Rabbi Shimon Aimer.
So he could take the
second one,
the tzara,
right? The second one who didn't have Zika from two brothers. She has Zika from one brother. You can take another Zika from two brothers.
He could.
And Rabbi Shimon Aimer, miyabeim le'ezeh sheyirtza b'cholitz l'shnia. No, you can do yibum with either one of them, right? In other words, you could even take the first one and then do chalitza with the second one, because once again, you can't take both wives. So you do yibum with one, but you still need chalitza because perhaps that didn't do anything. He wasn't kind to her, so therefore, right, you wouldn't say it's completely two wives, and therefore you do even with one, you completely part of the other one. So the shnia, fine. And echad shu ben tes v'yemechad v'echad shu ben esrim shelahivi shtei saros, and that which we keep talking about ben tes v'yemechad, he has the same status as somebody who is 20 years old, who's reached the age of 20. But is never brought forth to hairs, has not physically matured, and therefore he basically has the same status as a ben tes. Fine. Zaktimars. Amar Rava Hadam Rabbanan Zikas Shnei Yavamim Nichlas Chalutza Yavamim Lo Yavabe. Right. That which we say that the Zika of two Yavamas, right? That he does chalit from two brothers. In other words, that she now, we said the initial case, she has the original Zika from Ruvain, okay? And Shimon sort of acquired her through the Bia when he was 9, but he never fully acquired her or never did chalitza to basically remove, her status or from Ruvain or himself, right? So he says, such a case, right? There is chalitza that is required, but not yibum. Right? Yibum is forbidden. And don't say this just as in a case of where this is tzara. In other words, where basically that he married this 9-year-old married somebody else, right? In other words, because over there you can say that there's room to make a gzeira because he might take two wives from the same house, right? Right? Because over here, right, we'll say that that he'll be able to go ahead and take what's it called, and be able to because in this case we say also that even though there is no reason to make a gzeira, nevertheless we say you can't do yibum. Now this is reference to the case. If you take a quick look at Rashi for a second, Rashi brings it down, right? I think so Rashi brings down. So it says, so let's just look at Rashi for a second. It's the second wide line of Rashi, right? Could go in Hach the Arba Achim. So like that Mishnah over here in the Arba Achim, the Tanan says Gimel Achim, the Sun Gimel Nachrios, right? There were 3 brothers that married 3 non-related women. And one of them died. Ruvain died, right? So now he has Shimon and Levi, who each are already married, right? And let's say Shimon goes ahead and does mimer with the widow of Ruvain, Umeis. And now all of a sudden, Shimon dies. So he has Shimon's wife fall to Levi, and also Ruvain's wife, who never had a full Yibum Chalitza, also still needs her Yibum Chalitza, but she sort of needs it from 2 people, right? Or from 2 husbands, right? She needs it because she was fully married to Ruvain. And also Shimon did mimer with her, so she's sort of connected with Shimon. So he said, also about Shimon mimer umeis hare elu chotzes v'lo misyavos. They have to chalitza na yibum v'aminan. Right? Big Mama said that they are easy because they v'amim the daraisa chalitza na ami loy tiboy. If we say that there's zika right? From two brothers, he shouldn't eat it all. The answer there, right? Because over there we say that if two women fall right from one, then they would say that people might say that two of them from one house can both do yibum. So therefore they require chalitza, and there is no yibum there. So that was the case there. So it's not. So we say in that case. So even though in our case that the zika of two yibam, you do chalitza not yibum, right? Don't say only where there is a tzara that you can make a gzeira, but even where there is no tzara, it's always you do chalitza and not yibum, right? It's not just if it's only one wife. And then we say nas isha meis v'chule. This is just going to the regular case of a 9-year-old who marries, and Tanina, we're going to the Tanna Rabbanan. Sheita the cotton shenasu mesu. If they go ahead and they marry somebody and they die, right? A sheita, a person who's deranged, or a cotton, a minor, right? Neither of them can go ahead and acquire a woman to acquire a woman to require one of the brothers to yimra chalitza. And then we said, Ben back to our case, when he said a 9-year-old, and then he went ahead and he did Bia. And then if he went ahead and...
I think the last case was with the Shota Katan is that the wife doesn't, who survives doesn't need...
Yibra Chalitza. Right. In other words, he doesn't acquire them at all.
Because it wasn't a real marriage.
There's no kinyan. Right. Right. It's going back on the marriage itself that none of the brothers would be required to do Yibra Chalitza because they can't acquire anybody, a shota or a cut. Right. So the Gemara says, V'yasu bias ben tes k'maymer begadol v'tidchet sarah miyibu. I understand. Why don't we go ahead and say, let's say similar to that case we had earlier, that if the 9-year-old went ahead and married somebody else, right? And that was after he became older. So he did Bia as a 9-year-old with the Yavama from Ruvain, and then he married somebody else. So why don't we say over there that it's just like a case of, forget it that he was a katan and did Bia. Let's pretend he was a gadol and did mimer. Okay, he was a gadol and did mimer, and in that case, right, right, and therefore the tzara would not be able to do yibum, right? But our Mishnah seems to say the first one needs chalitza, and the second one he could do yibum or chalitza. Samarav lo asu bias bentes mimer begadol. No, so in this case, the bia of the bentes is different than the mimer begadol. Shmuel Amar, Asu v'yasu. No, indeed, it is. It is the same thing. And so the Rabbi Yochanan says, yes, indeed, they surely did. If that's the case, the Asu, okay, if they made it the same, then you should have the same halachic status. In other words, that the second wife of Shimon in this case should be only able to do chalitza and not yibum, just like the case we had earlier. So the Gemara says, no, tonight it's actually machlokes tonight. And why the two cases concentrate in different aspects? So Hach Tana Darbach and that Mishnah over there in Arbach and Gazer Xer over there. Then he had to do. There was no yibum allowed. Mishum Tzara V'Yashmina and Begadol. And why I talk about a gadol? If what did Bekatan? Really, the same applies by the bia of a katan. V'Hai Damar Gadol. And the reason why it says there Begadol, Mishum the Begadol is referring to a gadol. V'Hai Tana Dahacha and our Mishnah over here. The Svir Le Asu V'Loi Gazer. Our Tana holds actually argues and says no, they did not svirle asu. Yes, it is the same. However, like gazer mishum tzara, but there is no gzera of the tzara, right? And therefore, therefore it says in the case of the katan, but really the bia of the katan would be the same as the maimer of a gadol. Because we're talking about a katan. Fine. Now comes some interesting Gemara. I think this is. Either is repeat. I don't think I remember this so well. I think this is a famous Gemara, but it doesn't make sense. I remember from 7.5 years ago. So Azul, Rabbi Elazar, Amar l'Shmaitze b'Midrasha. So Rabbi Elazar went along and said this halacha in the base Medrash, right? And he didn't quote Rabbi Yochanan. He didn't give credit to Rabbi Yochanan's ruling, and this is what we just said. So Shama Rabbi Yochanan. right? So Rabbi Yechon got upset. So Rabbi Ami Rabbi Asi. So Rabbi Asi went up to Rabbi Yechon, tried to appease him. Amrulay, like Hakaya Maisa, the basic Knesset Shatveria. Didn't something happen in the basic Knesset Shatveria? There was an argument. Benaka Sheish Bereisha Belustra. Right, there was the case of there when they were arguing about a certain pestle, whatever, a door, right, whether it was considered to be Chil Shabbos, right, and they argued over there ad shekaru sefer Torah, the Chamasan, until the sefer Torah was torn in their anger. So karu sakadai, what do you mean? It was torn. Ella ema shenikra sefer Torah b'Chamasan, right? The sefer Torah was torn, right? Their anger, they're arguing. V'haya sham Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Right, and over there, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was there. Yeah, I won't be surprised since this house, this house of worship, houses house of anger. There's so much anger going on to the extent that a Sefer Torah was accidentally torn. Right, I wouldn't be surprised if this house eventually becomes a house of Avodah Zarah. And it was. So they tried to appease him and said, "Hey, don't be angry because you get angry. Bad things will happen, and you know, he got even angrier. It not only did not help, it didn't help the situation. They poured gas in the fire. I'm a you're comparing me to two guys who were arguing over Gemara, right? They were colleagues. Rabbi Elazar is not my colleague; he's my student, right? So you're further insulting me. You got angry. So Rabbi Yaakov Ba'idi went there. Amarle, he says the pasuk says Kashir Tivashem as Moshe Avdo. That just like he commanded Moshe 7. Kate Siva Moshe as Yeshua, so to Moshe Yeshua. B'chenasa Yeshua Allah Yisir Davar Mikol Asher Tziva Hashem as Moshe. And nothing, that was missed that they told over was missed from Hashem to Moshe that was related to him. I'll call Davar Shamar Yeshua Haya Omer Lahem Kachamar Li Moshe. Right, and everything. Right? Did Yeshua say, Moshe told me this, Moshe told me this, Moshe told me this? Ella, Yeshua Yoshev Darish. Rather, Yeshua was there, he's sitting and darshaning, Stam. And everyone knew his Torah was from Moshe. He didn't have to say it every time. So too, your student Rabbi Elazar, right? He's sitting and darshaning, and he said this halacha, and the difference between the two cases, our mission, the mission over there, it was Arba Achin. So everyone knows it really from you. Summer Lahem. So he said, okay, fine. Rabbi Echon says, you're right. Thank you. Feels good. Summer Lahem. So he turns to Rabbi Rabasi. Right? You should learn how to cool people down from the great son of was it Baridi? Ben Idi, right? I lost. Rabbi Yechon. Okay, fine. Stamazoi. Rabbi Yechon, my time a copy. Why was Rabbi Yechon so upset? Why did he want the halacha to be quoted in his name as the big bulk? What's the issue? So then Rabbi Rav, my dixie was a pasuk mean. So the pasuk over there says I think it's in Tehillim, right? So it says over there, it says, Agura ba'alecha olamim, right? You live in your tent, forever, right? Can you live in two places forever, right? So it says, Elam Adalifnei Kodesh Baruch Hu, Ribbono Shel Olam, Hashem says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yiratzon Sheyomru, right? Davar Shmo Mipi Bilam Hazeh, right? They should say things in my name in this world. Dem Rabbi Yechon Mishur Rabbi Shimon Yochai, Kol Tamar Chacham Shaymin Davar Shmo Mipi Bilam Hazeh, Sosaisav Davos Bekever. His lips are moving in the kever. In other words, he wanted it for his schus for himself, right? He wanted it. I'm Rabbi Yisrael ben Zira, B'Tem Rabbi Shimon ben Zira. My crow was a pasuk made. The chikech kiyayin hatov holech ledodi lemesharim doivev sifse yishanim. Right, that his mouth will be full of good wine, and his lips will be moving in his sleep. Just like it means like a large, vat of grapes. He touches it, it all moves around. So too, if someone says a shmua in this world in his name, then his lips will be moving in the world to come. So basically, he's being mentioned in two worlds. It affects two worlds, and therefore that's the reason why Rabbi Yechon wanted his name to be quoted.
It's like he's banking it for when he will die.
Right? Yeah. Even though at this point in time, but he wants people to get used to also.
How did Rabbi appease him? That this still applies.
Right, still applies, but he wasn't angry because he's saying everyone knows it's in your name. So now, by him saying it, it's ki'ilu. It's he said of Shmo, and therefore you'll get the credit, and therefore your lips will move in the olam haba. So he says. Then we said Echa ben Tishrei v'chulei. So Raminu. So we said over there that a person who did not, age of 20, did not physically mature, so then he's considered he's like these cottons. Raminu ben Esrim shana v'shalo hevi shtei saros. We didn't go ahead and bring shtei saros. Yaviu ra'ishu ben Esrim v'u asris l'chalis l'biyabim. So all he has to do is bring proof. He brings his birth certificate that he's 20, right? And he's considered a stris, and therefore he's excluded from the parsha of Yibum Chalitza. But what do you see? He's considered like a gadol. He's not considered a katan anymore, where he's like sort of does partial kinyanim. He's excluded from the parsha. He's like a gadol. So and similarly, Bas Esrim Shana Shalevia, and also a female who is 20 years old, Shalevia Shtei Saros Yaviurai Shehi Bas Esrim Vihi Islandess, and that's called an islandess. And now she'll never physically mature. And once again, she's proved by Avim Chalitza. So the Gemara answers, what about our case? That over there applies. We're talking about a case of when Simani Stris, different physical signs. Let's say the voice. You can't tell. It's not. The voice is different, or other parts are apparent that makes it a simon that he's a stris, right, or she's an islandess. And then we say, okay, they're officially an islandess or a stris, and they're like a gadol, right? Because this is who they're going to be for the rest of their life, right? It's not like they'll never be a gadol. Just they have that answer. So if you show the simani stris, then you're a 20-year-old adult. But if you never bring those signs, then you're like a katan. And Amarav Diganami, who Asris, and he's Asris, Shamina. We learned from there that they were talking about a case of where they brought they had other physical aspects that showed them that they were Asris. So until how long do you wait? The person doesn't physically mature. So Tani debate Reb Chia ad Rav Shnasav until the majority of one's years, right? Well, Rav Shana is the person 70 years old, so it'll be 35, 36 years old. And Kiyos Lakame de Rava. So other times they came for Rava with a person who basically not physically mature, and they were almost very tiny. So Zilu Avriyu. So he says Ichush, if the person was very weak or meager, go ahead and feed him, make him fat, maybe because he's too thin. That's the reason why he's not physically matured, right? He said in the Holocaust, right? A lot of people they weren't maturing because they didn't have the proper nutrition, right? If he was too fat, right? Put her on a diet. Because to be perhaps they did have physical maturity, they did have science, they did have hair. However, perhaps some of the hair is fell off because they're too thin, too meager, or too fat. And therefore, they didn't show the signs. But if you go on a diet, you're too fat, or if you're way too unhealthily skinny, and you feed them, then they just show the physical signs. So, Hadralah, Chaisha, Rada. All right, next. Yeah, there you go. Yaitzik. Naya Mishnah, Naya Perek. So now we begin. So, Naisin, Alanusa, Vel HaMefuta. All right, one can go ahead and marry, right? Somebody, a relative, right? Someone who's related to his anusa, and is someone who he violated or seduced. So if he's on his mafata, he can go ahead and marry her. It's not a violation, right? Of being with, we know there's certain cases where one's wife, you're forbidden to her relatives. So this is not considered to be a wife. This is another category of a woman who is on his mafata. Right now, and once again, if he went ahead and let's say he violated somebody who was, which is also right, not halachically permitted, but he was ma'anes or mefate, someone who was a relative of his wife, right? Then he would also be chayiv that he would be chayiv for being with his, let's say, his wife's sister, right? So, you can't marry your wife's sister, right? But if you violate your wife's sister, you also violated that, right? And they say, Adam, Anusis Aviv, Mufuzas Aviv, Anusis Benam, Mufuzas Benam. A person is able to go ahead and marry, right, somebody who is either his father violated, or somebody who his son violated. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Ba'anusas Aviv, Mufuzas Aviv. So, excuse me, Rabbi Yehuda Aiser, Ba'anusas Aviv, Mufuzas Aviv. Right. However, Rabbi Yehuda Aser says no, you cannot go ahead and marry somebody that your father violated or seduced. So Zak the Gemara. So Tanina lahad Tanrabanan anas isha muter lisa bita. Right, a person goes ahead and is manis, he violates a woman, so he's muter lisa. He's allowed to go ahead and marry her daughter, and nasa isha. And if he, but if he goes ahead and he marries a woman, also lisa bita. But then he's forbidden, right, to marry her daughter. So if he violated a woman, he can marry her daughter. But if he married a woman, he cannot go ahead and marry a daughter. So one who goes ahead and there's rumors about a person, there's rumors about a person being with a woman that, there's amongst the city, right, amongst all the WhatsApp groups, right? So it says there's rumors, so it's also for him to be with her. So what do you see over there? So even over there, if he violated or seduced her, right? So we say he's usher. And you just said if he violated a woman, he's able to go ahead and marry the daughter. And over here it seems to say worst case scenario, right? Even if he was guilty of the rumors, right? So it says asr b'mavita v'achaisa. So the Gemara says over there midrabanan. Okay, it's only midrabanan. Well, our Mishnah says you can be married al nusav al mafuta, right? So even if he was violated a woman who's and so he's able to go. You can marry. Sounds like lechatchila. So why is your Mishnah telling you lechatchila? So the answer is kitamas nisan liachamisa. Our Mishnah is talking about liachamisa. In other words, he violated a woman, and then that woman died. Right? Then he's able to go ahead and be nice and alanusa the al hamafuta. So Menahani merely from the Menos from the Tanrabanan bechula nemer shchiva. All the asurim of in terms of one's relatives, it says you can't be shachiv. V'kan nemar kicha. Over here, it says a lashon of kicha, right? Lo yikach. So l'malacha derech likuchen asher Torah. So therefore, to tell you that it's only derech likuchen. In other words, to go ahead and someone who you violated. So it's dafka your wife. If you take a woman, that her relatives are forbidden. But if you don't take a woman, there is no kicha. You only violated her. Then her relatives would not be forbidden. So Amar later, Gabi Achaisa. The Ksiva says, Isha Shir Yikach Esachaiso, Bas Avi Bas Imo, a man who takes his sister, right? Hakinami Derech Kifu. Is that talking about what? Only he marries his sister, he can't violate. But Derech Shiva Shari, but Derech Shiva will be mutter. So Amar Le, Likuchi Ksivi B'Torah Stam. He says Likuchi oftentimes made B'Torah Stam. Haroy the Kicha. When we're talking about right marriage, right? Then when it's appropriate to talk about marriage, then it refers to marriage, such as the case of one's wife. However, when it's talking about, let's say, a sister, so it wouldn't be chalber, so that is talking about violate. And Rav Amar, Anas Isha Mutter Lisa Bita. And Rav says, no, it's a person's body, it's a woman's mutter to go ahead and marry a daughter from this passage. It says, Erbas Bas Bincha O Bas Bincha Lo Sigala. Bas Bina Dida. Ubas Bita Dida Gali. It says the erva of Bas Bincha of only your son or your daughter, then is your grandchild, your granddaughter, like Sigala. But it sounds like your wife's granddaughter, right? Or grandchild, you can be Gali, right? You can go ahead and marry or reveal, right? Stephen says as Ervas Isha Bita Lo Sigala as Bas Binov as Bas Bita. Then it says your wife's Lo Sigala as Bas Binov. You can't take your wife's granddaughter, so Lo Sikach, so you can't take her. Okay, it's that how is that Kambanusin Kambanusua, right? What is the case of marriage? If it's the case of marriage, then you can't go ahead and if she then her granddaughter becomes forbidden. But if you just a case of when you violated a woman, then her granddaughter or her granddaughter either from her daughter or son will be mutter. So I want you to flip it around. Who says that way? So Arayas share ksibahu ben asuin ikasher ben einsin akasher. In other words, we're talking about the Arayas is referring to related. So in other words, that which is forbidden is when you're related to the woman or to your wife. So therefore, if you're related to her, so therefore you become forbidden to her granddaughters. However, if you only violated a woman, right, then since you're not related to her, so therefore that this isser, this erva of share would not be asur to you. And he forbids nusas aviv. So Amar Rav Gidal, Amar Rav, my time, Rav Yehuda, the pasuk says, "La'ikach ishas aviv lo yigal kanaf." So it says, person should not take a man should not take his father's wife, and he should not reveal her kanaf, right? So aviv, kanaf shara aviv layigal. So no longer means that something that his father revealed, something he was with. And who says referring to that which your father, right, revealed, right? It was referring to that someone he violated. See, who says that? It says in the previous pasuk, so the previous pasuk, right? There's smoking over there. The previous pasuk, right, says that the previous pasuk says that talking about a case of a person violates, you have to go ahead and pay 50. If it was together, however, but now there is not necessarily together. There's another part of the pasuk. Right, the Ravanan, Dam Ravanan, Amar Shmuel, the Shemeres Yavim Shel Aviv Kasav Daber. It's not talking about the Anusas Aviv over there, rather it's talking about somebody who that the father was waiting for Yibam, the Shemeres Yavim Shel Aviv Kasav Daber. Umay Kanaf Aviv, Kanaf Haruv Aviv. It doesn't mean something that your father did already violates. Rather, it's referring to somebody who was fit for your father to go ahead and reveal, i.e., his Shemeres Yavam. But it should not be usher because of Dodasa. Because now, if your father had to do Yibum, then it must have been his brother's wife, and then his brother died. So to Lavim, so he says no. So okay, Yivam also give him a third lavi, but some say liachamisa, even liachamisa. So I see we have a little short on time. Maybe we'll stop here. So we're a little short. So tomorrow, Mirz Hashem. If not tomorrow, the next 2 days. We've never fallen behind for 2 days, but we'll stop here to see if people go on time for happening. It's